Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new season and a new episode of the Dental Money Lounge. First of all, thank you very much to our former co-host and friend, Hassan Mushaid. Best of luck to you, and very pleased to welcome our new co-host and friend, David Hossein from Brooks. Hi, David.
Hi, Max, and hi, Laura.
Very good, thank you. Very good. So today, we are very pleased to have on our new format, in a webinar format, a very experienced professional and our friend with over 30 years of experience in the banking industry, Metrobank, RBS, NatWest, and a couple of years ago, I believe that decided to set up her own business with the view to help dentists in their business journey, from CQC application to submitting tender, writing for winning contract. Laura Graham, everybody. Hi, Laura. How are you?
Hi, Max. Hi, David. Thank you very much. Yeah, pleased to be involved.
Fantastic. So today, Laura, we'll be talking about the realities of making an NHS tender for dental services. So, Laura, over to you.
Thank you, Max. This is really just to go through the NHS commissioners are literally do not offer additional UDAs or UOAs like they used to. Everything now has to be procured so that anybody who is interested has the ability to tender so that the commissioners get best value for money. So where are these contracts, or where are these procurements? Some of them are, you will get contacted from your local area team, but they are all, and they have to be published on Contracts Finder, which is a government website. And if you are keen to bid, I would suggest that you do a weekly diary note, just to have a look on Contracts Finder to see what new procurements or possible procurements might be coming. Like I say, the area teams do liaise with providers, existing providers. So you'll quite often get an email ahead of it going on to Contracts Finder. So if you are an existing provider, I would say keep close to the area team, your commissioners, get involved with the LDC, your local dental network, or even the MCM. By being involved with these groups, you will probably get a heads up a little bit before it actually goes on Contracts Finder, so you can prepare yourself that little bit more. So the contracts that the commissioners are procuring are 99% PDS contracts. So a PDS contract is usually for a specific amount, and it's usually time limited. For a PDS contract as opposed to a GDS contract, the provider can only be a limited company, a limited liability partnership, or an individual or sole trader. A partnership is not an acceptable entity to bid for contracts any longer. So I know that there's a lot of talk about existing NHS contracts that exist, and they're in individual names, and people try to incorporate them. So if you are looking to extend your services, you may wish to apply for a contract in a name other than your existing NHS contract. So, for example, if you are an individual provider with your GDS contract, you may wish to apply for a new procurement in a new company name, or you could bid in your own personal name.
So a partnership, you said, is no longer a possibility. How about if you want to collaborate with additional providers? Can you still create a consortium and apply for the tender in a group as opposed to just on individually.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite often creating a consortium and joining forces with other people strengthens you as a group, as a bidder for whichever procurement it is. So yeah, but you would have to have a legal arrangement behind the bidding company, just to, you know, I guess come to some agreement as to who's doing what if you were successful with the bid.
Yeah.
And if you had multiple shareholders, I presume you need a shareholder agreement as well to go with that, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that you need to really be speaking to dental specialists, lawyers and accountants, because they will make sure that whatever agreement is in place protects all the individuals behind the consortium.
Agreed.
So the commissioners put different kinds of announcements on contracts finder. A PIN notice is usually when it's just a preliminary interest notice. So this is something that they're thinking of procuring, but they just want to gauge how much interest there is from providers who'd be willing to bid. Quite often after a PIN notice, and with a PIN notice you would just register your interest. After a PIN notice, then the commissioners would tend to organise a market engagement event. So this is where they would share with potential providers or bidders what they're actually looking for from the tender. So if you are interested in tendering, then I would always suggest going to the market engagement events, because you are speaking to the commissioners that are actually commissioning the service, and they often share additional information in the market engagement event that isn't always included in the specification of the bid. So, and also in the market engagement event, you have the opportunity to ask questions of the commissioners directly. But once the call for competition goes live, then there's no direct communication through with the commissioners. It all goes through a central portal, and any questions that you ask, everybody else will be given the answer. So you're kind of sharing any information or additional information that you're asking with your competitor bidders. So after the market engagement, there's usually another stage. Sometimes it's called the pre-qualifying questionnaire or selection questionnaire. More recently, with the orthodontic procurement, there being the dynamic purchasing system or the pseudo dynamic purchasing system. Essentially, they are all one and the same thing, but basically you are asked for details of who you're going to be, the bidder's name, their details, registered company, who the directors are, qualifications, experience with NHS contracts, and basic affirmations with regards to compliance with CQC, NHS, waste disposal, Slavery Act, and other various requirements that you need to pass in order to make it to the final stage, which is where you actually write your bid, and that's either called the call for competition or the invitation to tender. So sometimes the PQQ or the DPS is longer than others, but it does involve quite a bit of information sharing with the commissioners. And then once you've completed that, then they would acknowledge that that you've passed that, and then will receive a notification once the call for competition or the the tender goes live. So as I said previously, preparing for a tender is key. So understanding the name of the company or individual name that you're going to use, because you will need to create a company if you are going to be bidding in the name of a company. And the other thing to consider with any name that you're going to bid in is that the financials and the commissioners need to be assured that you are financially stable, because they cannot afford to grant a bid to somebody who is not stable and cannot fulfill the contract because of their finances. So with an existing provider, if you're an existing provider and you're trading either as a company or in your individual name, you should have accounts for at least 2 years. They ask for audited accounts, but audited accounts aren't a requirement, I understand, for businesses that turn over less than £10 million.
Yes, most of my clients who apply for tenders do not have audited accounts. They have accountants. They have accounts with an accountant's report, which in my experience has been sufficient.
Yeah, so basically you need your accountant to basically confirm that the accounts that are provided are comply with all accounting regulations, and the commissioners seem to accept that.
And Laura, to ask you, sorry, just to make sure it's clear, before you mentioned that you can apply for the bid in a new entity's name, so say you already have a practice in a limited company, but you'd like the new contract to be in a new company, they would still ask for the business accounts for your existing practice, regardless of what the new contract will go into, to get comfort on your financial position. That's what you're saying?
Well, not always, because if you're creating a new company for a new bid, to enhance the financial viability of that new company that has no trading history, you could say that your other company will guarantee it, and then at that point you would provide the accounts for the company that would guarantee it. So if you don't have that, then the alternative is that you have to provide cash flows, a forecast profit and loss accounts, and a business plan. So there's a lot more work if you do not have any financial history, because obviously the commissioners need to be reassured that you are actually stable and are financially viable. Quite often they would need confirmation from a bank of a level of support of funding, or proof that you've actually got cash deposits to cover that.
And when you say new entry, also, sorry, just to make sure it's clear, are we talking about a new practice? Because I have seen associates who have wanted to tender for a contract, and that would be a new practice. So is that what you're describing here, that you would need the business plan and so on? Yeah.
So basically, where there is no financial history for the bidding name, and I guess as an associate, the income, the gross income through those accounts is not going to be anywhere near the value of the contract that you're bidding for. So you would need to make sure that you've got a business plan and forecast to demonstrate that you can make it work.
Okay, thanks, Laura.
So once the bid is live, when you've got the call for competition, the first thing that I would always recommend is that you make sure that the bid is viable. The commissioners are obviously looking for the best value for money. So what tends to happen is they are looking for people to bid for the lowest price, and provide the best service. For some, the contract is an extension of the service that they're already providing, and it's a more of a guaranteed income, so they can probably absorb some of the costs. But sometimes if you're setting up a practice specifically to fulfill this contract, and then you're bidding for the lowest value UDA or UOA or whatever, it just doesn't make it viable. So I would always recommend looking at the figures or speaking to your accountant, and for your accountant to work through the figures, because unless it's viable from your perspective as well as from the commissioner's perspective, it's just not worth bidding for, because obviously with an NHS contract you have KPIs and you've got expectations of what is required of the contract, and if you don't, then the stress that would be associated with not fulfilling the contract, I would imagine, would be extremely high.
Laura, would it be fair to say sometimes people see the headline figure and that kind of blinds them to, so £400,000 worth of fee income, but then when you do the math and the impact on your business and what actual profit margin is left for you, that's the real kind of question to ask yourself. Is it worth it for me based on the profits as opposed to the headline turnover figure?
Absolutely, and I think that you absolutely spot on, that the headline figure, as you say, of 400,000 and sometimes even more than that, just blinds people from actually doing the cost calculations and staffing beyond that.
So Laura, do you suggest at a very early stage, even at the PQQ, the pre-qualification questionnaire, to actually do the financial and to make sure that it's actually going to be financially viable to win the contract?
Yeah, I mean, if the information is provided at that stage, then yes, definitely do the sums. But quite often, the commissioners don't actually release the final figures until the call for competition. So you have to go through that kind of first stage just to qualify for the second stage, and to be given the information, the full suite of information about the service spec and the financial requirements.
Is the call for competition also known as the ITT, which is the invitation to tender process?
Yeah, different commissioners call it different things, but essentially it's one and the same. Yeah, absolutely. So whilst the finances is a large part of the tender, in reality it isn't. It's a large part from, one, obviously the commissioners have got that money allocated for this service, and two, it has to stack up from your perspective. But on a point scoring, it usually isn't any more than about 30% of the overall points that are attributed to the finance. The rest of the scoring is based upon the clinical model of service. So whatever service that they're looking to offer, you need to be able to articulate how you're going to meet the service specification. The NHS at the moment are looking for a lot of innovation, a lot of collaboration with other healthcare providers. I know on the GP side there's the whole primary care network, and need to kind of collaborate with them to make sure that every contact counts, which is a big program that they're pushing at the moment. So making sure that you're up to speed with what the commissioner's buzzwords are and incorporating them into your bid is important.
Thanks, Laura. Do you want to talk to us about some of the timescales involved?
The timescales are tight, which is why you need to really be on your game and prepared for when the bid goes on to the PIN notice or the market engagement, and then the SQ. Usually you get between 2 and 4 weeks to do that first stage. The second stage is usually 4 weeks, but more recently we've seen 8 weeks. But it is literally quite an intense period, and you need to be sure that you have the time in your life to be able to work with somebody or do it yourself, because it is very time consuming.
Laura, in your experience, you submitted and won different types of contracts: general dental contracts, orthodontic contracts, oral surgery contracts. Is there a difference in the timescale and the process for different type of contracts?
The orthodontic.
Or do you have similarities between the different type of contracts?
Yeah, they are similar. I think it also depends on the commissioners and how soon that they're looking to start the service. I mean, the orthodontic one has been quite a drawn-out process over the last 2 years, and they have an 8-week time from when the call to competition or the ITT goes live to submission date. But normally, I would say 4 weeks is the timeline from when it goes live to when it needs to be submitted. And the submission time is specific, and there is no flexibility there. The one good thing about the tenders, they tend to be on a portal, and you can submit ahead of the submission, and then you can submit again. And basically, the most recent submission is the one that the commissioners will actually evaluate. So it's good to get one version submitted so that at least you don't miss that deadline, because you don't know that your computer's going to play up or their systems are going to play up or something. So it's a case of really making sure that you're working probably a day before the actual the deadline to make sure you get it submitted.
Thank you. David, do you have any other questions?
No, Laura, that's been really helpful. I'm sure there's lots of people out there thinking of doing a tender and they're not sure where to start or who to work with. Can say I've worked with you before for a number of clients successfully, and I've always been happy with your work. So I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Laura. Which today has been very useful, and what emerged from our conversation is that it's a very competitive environment. So to submit for tender a new contract, so it's absolutely vital that anyone thinking about entering into this journey to partner with someone like yourself to make sure that they create a competitive and very convincing pre-qualification questionnaire, but also, of course, the actual ITT and the invitation to tender.
Absolutely.
So we have here all the contact details for Laura. Anyone interested in having a further conversation about tendering, they can contact myself, max@brutopartners.co.uk. They can contact David. David, what's your email address and contact details?
It's david.hussain@bennettbrooks.co.uk.
Or you can contact directly Laura on 07792 879201 or laura@businesshelpforhealthcare.co.uk. Thank you very much, Laura. It's been a pleasure having you today.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, Laura. Bye-bye.
Pleasure.
Bye for now.